Hi, welcome back to Wild Speculations. I'm Daniel.
I'm Scott.
This week we talk about Critical Role Campaign 2, Episode 130, The Calm Before the Storm. I was pretty proud of our predictions that came true in this episode.
Yeah, I think we were relatively accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, and one from way back, which we'll get to in due time. But we start off, Matt giving us a recap of the last two episodes.
Yep.
And being in the gentleman's underground, the evening nip.
Yes.
And Jester downloading everything to her dad. And what made me laugh in the lead up to that was, as she's saying, you know, we're kind of in trouble. And he says, it's not the High Richter, is it? No. Step above them.
Close, Dad, close. And I like how the gentleman goes about his introduction at the very beginning, and just that you're here, and it's layered. He's not just asking for discretion about his business. It seems like he's telling Marion, "Hey, be discreet about our past. Don't.
Yes.
These people don't need to know that."
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. There's multiple layers of that.
He's begging for discretion.
Yeah. Yeah. I am worried that somebody is going to ask for a reward for information on where they are.
Yeah.
Several times in the conversations between everybody, it was mentioned in one way or another, this is a den of thieves.
My money's on the halfling. None of them remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Which kind of like both his halflings, major NPCs that we've seen, this one and Otis and the Tomb Takers, act more like goblins.
Well,
than
not acting more like a halfling than a traditional goblin.
Yeah. It's just, I thought it was
and so does Wentworth.
Yeah.
He acts more like a halfling than a goblin.
Yeah. So I think it was just a way for Matt to play with expectations and stuff.
Of course, part of me wants to reach back to my original theory about not, and that it's a weakening of the curse that created goblins.
It's fair.
That maybe the two races aren't as dissimilar as we think.
Fair. Jester acts as wingman to her dad. And I don't know, it was kind of weird. I don't know. He had already cleaned everything up. And it's also not the first time that she's gone through his room, because she did that once before.
Yes.
There were a lot of, we've done this before in this episode.
Yes.
Including Yeza offering to work. Because the first time Yeza was here, he did.
Yeah.
Which answers our question at the time that we had, which was, what's he going to do for the gentleman? The answer obviously was nothing. But Caleb builds a cat toy so that Luke can play with Frumpkin. And in retrospect, it was foreshadowing of what Caleb was going to do later.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to blame Danny for that. Danny Carr.
Yes.
But I can talk more about that later. But we also have the Spice Girls. And everyone claiming one or being given one. And Ford not wanting any part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And because he did not specify which Spice Girl he was, they sort of gave him one, but he did not say, I am turning into that. My headcanon is he turned into Billy Butcher.
Yeah, I really wanted him to be Rob Schneider from The Hot Girl, the hot chick.
Well, I think mine is more enforced by his interaction once they get to Pumat.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Is there someone else in here? Oh yeah. Fuck off. Get out of here.
And so Matt, was he playing off a mistake with Pumat Prime seeing through the illusion, or does Pumat Prime have some sort of tree seeing?
Matt has established that Pumat Prime has true seeing.
Okay.
Because it's not the first time they've come into his establishment disguised.
That's true.
And that he recognized them through their disguises. Now, I don't know if this is Matt forgetting that they come in disguised.
That's how the scene felt to me. When he's like, oh wait, you guys are in disguise, you know?
Pumat Prime is of high enough level.
Yeah.
That he could definitely have that ability.
Well, and he's always got those goggles on his head. They could be goggles of true sight.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, I think it's definitely possible.
And with him being the only one that wears the goggles, none of the similar comes have them.
Yeah. But, yeah, there's a lot of things in episode 130 that I think there was a lot of forgetting not just what had happened like long before, but also in the moment.
Yeah.
Like Matt saying in this episode, the gentleman makes everyone go away. And when they come back, suddenly the employees are still there.
Yeah.
I think something's was going on behind the scenes when they were filming it that had Travis occupied and that was weighing on Matt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was, but
yeah.
Yeah. And yes, Nick, the Liam committing to the bit that he is bad at accents.
Yeah.
And whatever floor gets set by one of the other players, he has to
limbo right under it.
Yeah. And I think Taliesin doesn't get often a window to dig at Travis and Caduceus at Ford.
Yeah.
And I think with him in the mindset of I'm going home, he has to tease
Yeah.
the people in the group that are closest to family to him. And Ford is definitely that person.
Yeah.
So I think that's why he chose that accent. But yeah. Also, they tease Taliesin that he's bad at accents, too.
Yeah.
So he's also just getting ahead of that. I'll just be comically bad.
I mean, that's what I do. I know I'm horrible at accents, so if I do one, it's just ridiculous bad. Because it's going to be bad anyway.
Yasha gets her breastplate appraised.
Yeah.
And, well, appraised. And Pumat's like, this is infernal, Make. Starts asking, where'd you get it? Questions. And I kind of sympathize with Matt when he asks, where were you keeping this? But at the same time, it's kind of too late.
Yeah.
In the campaign for him to be doing that. Because D&D Beyond and the base rules of carrying capacity don't care.
Yeah.
And when Sam's like, am I just carrying thousands of gold on me? Yeah. Yeah, you are.
Well, and that's one of the things that you and I pay particular attention to with our characters.
Yeah.
Both of us even go as far as to have 3x5 cards or extra pay for that.
Well, and once we get the bag of holding, it's now on I usually use accounting paper.
Right.
Paper.
And you and I are both fairly meticulous about what is where on our person.
Yeah. Well, I consider it getting into costume.
Yeah, exactly. And we've talked about that.
So that's why it's important for me. Because knowing where something is determines what you can do in a scene.
Yeah.
In my brain, anyway.
Carrying it in a sack on your belt versus in your backpack versus in a sheath versus, wherever is, it really manipulates the strategy of your character.
Yeah.
Or in my character's case, in the pouches on the side of his chair and stuff.
Yeah. They get their chalice and 150 gold worth of tiny diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt points out that these kind of objects aren't just lying around.
Yeah.
That generally you have to commission them. Which makes me wonder, are we going to start seeing that happen more?
Commissions?
Yeah.
Possibly next campaign. I really don't feel there's enough left to see it. Unless we have downtime type pauses, like they did in campaign 1.
Which,
to move on to a new act, I don't see it happening. And if there's a downtime of any considerable length, like 6 months, a year, and I know I've been wrong about this before, but I honestly don't see Beth coming back to the group.
Well,
if she settles into family life, she settles into family life.
Matt already planted the seeds that give her the opening to come back.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially if you have the low strength. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, in theory, D&D Beyond tracks all that. So in theory, Veth isn't carrying more than her carrying capacity.
Right.
But the carrying capacity in 5e is extremely generous.
Yeah.
So, and you don't suffer any negative effects until you reach that. And once you reach it, you just can't go anymore. That's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which is why Haversack's in bags of holding her.
Yeah.
One of the first magic items I always try to get a hold of.
Yeah, for real. We got the Bernatos, where Veth plays with Luke.
Mm-hmm.
And they plan to build Fluffernutters together. And they have their conversation. And Yeza says, when they were talking about when she promises to be back in 2 weeks, and that even if something bigger comes along later, she doesn't want to do it. And Yeza comes back and says, if you can make a difference and it can save us, you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, Veth at this point, with Yeza as her Uncle Ben, is going through the Spider-Man dilemma, the Peter Parker dilemma.
Yeah.
So does she come to the same conclusion that if you have power and you don't do something and the bad thing happens, it's your fault?
Yeah.
Because that seems to be where Yeza is going to come down.
Yeah.
At least that's what I got out of that conversation. And that's why I say, yeah, she isn't going to want to. But everything in the story is sort of pushing that way. Sam is enough of a troll. I could see him saying to hell with it and doesn't.
Yeah.
Especially if he wants to bring back Terry. Which would be hilarious. But I don't
think it'd be hilarious if he brought in a Warforged and was like Dodie 8.0.
Yeah. That too. Auntie Jester volunteers to babysit Luke.
Yep.
Who's sleeping, so it's not really a difficult babysitting task. And I can't imagine Luke being so tuckered out after running around this small space. So my headcanon is they gave him the fermented fruit juice.
Yeah.
And that knocked him out.
Yeah.
Because I've had a toddler.
I was going to say that 70s, 80s parenting method.
Yeah.
Rub some alcohol on their gums. They'll go out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's how my parents treated my teething when I was little.
Yeah.
Oh, it hurts. Just rub alcohol. Just let them pass out.
I mean, it does numb things.
It does?
But Jester, the big thing for Jester was lying to her mom.
Yeah.
And I love that scene every time I've watched it.
Well, I mean, arguably Beth lied to Yeza as well with the "we'll be back in 2 weeks."
Not a lie. She just made a promise she couldn't keep. There's a distinction. Jester knows. Jester has already made the commitment in her heart, mind, and soul that she will die to stop this. And she straight up lied to her mom and said she would not.
Yeah.
Veth is making a timing promise that she has no control over.
I really think, and I think it's clear that at least the majority of them, but I really think that all of them don't think they're coming back from this excursion. Caleb and Caduceus both said as much.
Yeah, well, and Jester has said repeatedly.
And I think that all of them are of that same mindset.
Yeah, and Ford gives her the Jane Cobb. Well, I might.
And yeah. And Beth, I think she's right there with them. But I don't think she wants to tell that to Yeza.
I will disagree in this point.
Okay.
I think Veth has made the decision to abandon the Mighty Nine if it looks bad.
Fair.
That she's made the decision, I'm going to get home. Even if it means sacrificing everybody, including Caleb.
That is a fair point, and I can see that, especially from when she was like, can you guys do this? No. Can anyone else? No. Can they do it without you? Crickets. Crickets.
Yeah.
So you could be right. She could be going thinking she's the linchpin that if she doesn't go, they definitely won't survive. But if they're not going to survive, they're not going to survive. I am.
Yeah.
I can 100% see that and be behind that. But
which also echoes the position that Scanlan was in last campaign. Because, like, a big thing in the last arc that was stressed about bards and Scanlan is the importance of getting back, of surviving, so that you could tell everybody.
Yes. But let's be honest, Scanlan was a linchpin. They would not have succeeded against Vecna if they did not have Scanlan with them.
Very true.
And yes, Caleb, well, you could argue the point that he has the least to lose. He's also the one with the most to gain. He's the one, arguably, who is the most unresolved with his backstory, with the possible exception of Ford.
Yeah.
And that so much of his backstory hinges on fixing the assembly or deposing the assembly.
Well, Caleb's character goals are arguably impossible on all fronts. Time travel to save his parents and fixing a broken system that's been broken since.
I'm not arguing the family point, but especially given the, I guess, assumption, which I don't, well, we are a show about making assumptions, but that he has inside people, and there's already one vacant seat.
Well, there may be 2 vacant seats.
Yeah. And possibly a third coming up.
Yeah.
And if the 3 of them can fill those seats.
Well, here's the thing. Filling those seats does not change the system. It doesn't fix the Empire.
No.
Shattering the assembly, sharing power with the king, fixes the Empire. Ultimately. And that's where Caleb wants to go. He wants to end the assembly's power. In how I have interpreted his desires spoken.
Okay.
Like, everyone wants him to take a seat to step into that role, but for his own soul, he realizes he can't do that. But he could collapse the whole thing so that nobody has that kind of power.
And see, I would argue that collapse in that power creates a void probably to be filled by the Ogden Trust, which is arguably just as corrupt.
But the Ogden Trust doesn't have people in it that can end the Empire on their own.
That we know of.
Where the Assembly is archmages.
Yeah.
Who already had a civil war with the king. Or the kingship.
Yeah.
And almost ended the Empire themselves. So, yeah. Removing that sort of Damocles, I think, is Caleb's goal. Which will never happen.
True.
Not without bloodshed. And, yeah. Or the support of the king, and they haven't even talked to him. But for everyone who thought that Yeza was a secret agent and was planning to assassinate the Mighty Nine, he foreshadowed his evil turn by telling Veth, I found some spots in Nicodranus I want to show you. I want to take you out into the desert where we can be alone.
Yeah.
Not that I think that that's in like I've poo-pooed that notion.
Yeah.
Since you brought it up, but yeah, I just thought it was funny to mention that.
Although
in that way.
Yeah, but he's also definitely not the bastion of heroic or benevolent ideals. That people dote on, with him encouraging his wife and stuff, as noted by his, as we covered earlier, his tendency, enthusiastic, his willingness to participate in shady shit. Oh yeah, I'll work for you. You're a criminal guy?
Well, this is the evil scientist, the useful scientist that Lex Luthor employs. Yeah, they're not diabolical, but Lex gives them the freedom to pursue the science they want the way that they want. That's where any nefariousness in Yeza, I think, it comes out there. And that's where Veth was encouraging of the whole charade.
Yeah.
And gave us confirmation of what we were talking about last week about their plans after.
Yeah.
That setting up a business with Yeza.
Yeah. And if they're supplying both Pumat and the gentleman, they've already got their enough client base to last them.
Yeah.
Although I find it funny that when the gentleman asks what skills they have, she totally blows by Yeza and offers up her son as an agent. He's great at sneaking, swiping, shooting, He's 4, but, come on.
Yeah.
Who suspects the toddler?
Yeah.
The parent, that's who.
Which made me think of Varys in Game of Thrones, and then later Qyburn.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And interestingly, coincidentally, after that individual overhears them saying they're going to go to Darktow and leaves the shop, Caleb gets a message from Trent.
Yeah.
Saying, you run like you have a guilty conscience. Why don't you tell me why I should stop pursuing you? And Caleb's response basically was down to, there are things larger than you. Get over yourself.
Yeah.
Which ironically may be the exact answer that he needed to hear to stop chasing them.
Yeah.
Because with them thinking they offed Vess and thinking they're coming after him next, him saying, look, this is bigger than you, means he's not their target.
Yeah. Yet.
Yet. Yes. So, and it also might mean that he's doing some parallel investigating and perhaps did the same thing that Jester does, which is to send a message to Yusa. And he got that response.
Yeah.
So maybe they Trent is off their back for now. We'll see. And Veth finally gives Yasha Vilya's flower.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish I don't know, maybe it will come back again. That's my only concern, is that hopefully it will come back.
Yeah.
And yeah, you'd think, well, they haven't gone to bed yet. And the plan was for Jester to spend all of her spell slots to contact Wentworth. And my guess is probably Blued.
Probably Blued.
To take care of the Blink Dog.
Yeah. Probably Essek as well. Check in.
No, Essek is first thing in the morning. We're on our way. Because if they teleport and something goes wrong, they want Essek to be aware to be looking for their broken bodies.
I mean, they can just as easily say, hey, we're going in the morning and save the spell slot tomorrow in case it's needed.
That's fair. Because she has 2/5, a 6, and a 7th.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, yeah, she has enough to use those to contact everybody. So yeah, that's fair.
I mean,
and like we thought, go to the break at the Grove.
Yep.
Come back to the Grove. Veth asking Caduceus for advice. I can't believe I almost went by without talking about it, because that gets me every time.
Yeah.
I'm afraid he's going to expect me to leave. And yeah, that's real.
Well, I mean, he does.
Arguably, yeah, already.
At this point, he does expect her to leave, and he, which begs the question, how much of his encouragement is actual encouragement and how much is coping? She's going to leave. I can either support it or...
I think for Luke, it's definitely encouragement. He's excited that his mom is an adventurer.
Right.
And loves hearing about the monsters that she kills. It's all an adventure story for him. So, yeah. Matt is not really the DM that's going to delve into the trauma and dealing with it for a 4-year-old dying. So I don't think we'll have to deal with that.
That's a fair point about Wentworth being held prisoner. However, like you said, when we talked about, that when I mentioned they could be taking things and stuff, I don't know that they're ready to start an international incident.
Yeah. Well, and the guy's butler, that they have no evidence that he was helping the Mighty Nine.
Right.
Just that he was a potential associate, but he's the most powerful arcane person in town, so of course Caleb is going to gravitate toward that. Yeah. So apart from the association, they have no proof that he was helping them at all. Plus, the guy's on the astral plane, astrally projecting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think Wentworth.
And how much do they expect a goblin butler to actually know?
Yeah. So, no, I don't think he's being tortured at all. He was probably questioned, but yeah. And yeah, those. We expected this episode to be a check-in episode.
Yeah.
And it was. We didn't get some pairings that I expected, but we got others that were happy coincidence, happy changes.
Like Beth and Caduceus.
Yeah. But we get to the Grove, and Caduceus, Yasha's excited to pick flowers. Caduceus gives her rules. And then he talks to his family, and we got more of the dynamic, further divorced from the tension of the stones.
Mm-hmm.
Where Calliope, they talk about how they both thought she was going to be the one. Mm-hmm. She was the one destined to go out and save
that he stole it from her.
Yeah. Which is an interesting twist on sibling rivalry and some of the conflicts that could arise out of primogeniture, inheritance, and that kind of thing. And Caduceus gets mad and walks out and goes to the spring.
Mm-hmm.
Where he flat out says to Matt, I want to cast Commune, but I want to use it in an odd way.
Yep.
I'm not looking for a yes or no question. Here's what I want. And Matt says, well, if you're going to do that, this is the place to do that. And I've been trying to think about why Taliesin uses Commune in legend lore the way that he does. And I think I'm settling on a notion that he already knows the answer, or he wants that he is as much putting a force on his deity as if he was working a mark. And I don't know.
I think it's
because I don't think she gave him, like, he wasn't asking for anything she hasn't already given him in one way or another already.
I think part of it is kind of, when you know something and you're just not ready to 100% admit to it, and you need someone else to reiterate what you already know to you, kind of thing.
Mm.
That was kind of the vibe I got from that. And yeah, there is, you're right, there is a lot of that wanting to stay, not wanting to deal with it. And yeah, they are. And, that was evident in the Veth Caduceus when he's like, yeah, I'm here for you even when we're not in things.
So, this episode, particularly this episode, to next point, what you were just saying, there were many moments in this episode where I was like, we're level 14. Isn't it a little late to be on step 2 of the hero's journey? Because step 1 is the call to action. Step 2 is the refusal. So,
well, I mean, to be fair,
Rumble Cusp was the call to action. Arguably. They saw the city. That's where Caduceus is like, we got to deal with this.
Right.
And now we're in the refusal part.
It only took us 3 levels to get there.
Yeah. But it was interesting to me that so many times in this episode, it was like, okay. And really, and in some ways, Ford is further along in that journey than everybody. Because his refusal happened when he threw away his packed weapon. Because his hero's journey was an anti-hero journey. His was, you're rising to be the villain. And he rejected that.
Mm.
And now he's in the acceptance. He's on his paladin path and serving a greater good now. So, but...
Except for the fact that I took his, I might, as yeah.
Yeah. That's fair. Also, I just have to appreciate Ashley and my envy of Matt for having a player like Ashley, who is not in the scene, but is totally enraptured in what Matt's throwing out.
Yeah.
And it was... I noticed it more in this episode, I think because of Travis, who... I think he only had, like if you were counting lines, as if in a script, 6 or 8 lines.
Yeah.
In the whole 4-hour episode. And he was he was on his phone a lot. And he's with his fidget spinner.
Mm-hmm.
Not that he was totally checked out, because there's a lot of moments where he's having jokes sideways with everybody.
Yeah.
And he's keeping aware of what's going on. But he's not... He knows Ford has nothing to contribute to the shopping. And he's there for if something goes down. So I'm just going to shut up so that this goes as fast as possible, because any words that I say is only going to lengthen it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas later, when he has that time with Jester, he's in the scene. But Ashley is just totally enraptured. I was like, and the meme, get you a woman, get you a player that looks at you the way Ashley Johnson looks at Matt.
Yeah.
But we finally got a long-term confirmation for Caduceus.
Mm.
And that is from the very beginning, we speculated that he was in some way connected to Molly's story.
Mm-hmm.
And in this episode, he tells everyone, his family, the Mighty Nine, the vision he had the night before that they showed up. And he was reading it.
Mm-hmm.
And when that was happening, I was just like, yes.
Which means it was part of the backstory that he submitted for Caduceus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Actually, Nick, Taliesin has not stated how old Caduceus is. He thinks of him as younger.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, to a Furbolg, that.
Yeah. I think he's still chronologically, I think he's older than everyone in the Mighty Nine.
Mm.
Where Caleb would be the second oldest.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how old he is. I think the main thing is that, and I think it was kind of evidenced in his talk with Calliope that, I think he's the youngest in his family. He's the baby of the family.
No.
He's not?
He's got a younger sister.
I thought they were all older.
No.
But I think his expectation was that he was going to stay, take care of the grove.
Clarabelle is younger than him.
Else was going to leave. You know what I mean? That he wasn't set for an adventuring life. He never expected it, never wanted it. He was happy just being at the grove, drinking tea, and interring the dead.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the big thing. His reading that vision was the big thing.
Yeah.
For me, in that. And then the hand grenade almost thrown into the campaign, with Bo actually trying to contact or try to empower her eyes.
Yeah.
And
which my brain is like, it's about time. What took you so long?
And see, in my head, I was like, you're gonna do that here after he just, his family were turned to stone to try to save this place, and you're gonna invite this darkness
back in? Yeah.
Yeah, that's where my brain was at. And I love Liam. If we want to destroy the campaign, we will. It's so funny. And then later he's like, it kind of reminded me of Matthew McConaughey. It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
Yep. Dazed and confused.
And I loved this is the last save before the boss guys. And I loved that Travis and Laura wanted to roll dice so badly that they rolled dice and compared what each one rolled. And she was excited because she rolled a 19 and he rolled a 15 or 16, I think.
Yeah.
So he was like, and she's like, that's not bad. And they are much more disciplined because they're recording. And we learned this when we did our live play.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us have the habit of playing with dice.
Yes.
Rolling them, scritching them, rolling them in your hand. And when you're recording, that's a lot of noise that you don't want. So they are quite disciplined about not doing that. So it's rare that they do anything like that. So yeah, that's shows how badly they want to be rolling dice.
Right?
But Caleb, his final thing is basically saying goodbye to Agent 111. And I phrase it that way so that I can blame Danny Carr for it. Because I think it was her narrative telephone that made, like, it switched something in Liam's brain. And he started thinking about Frumpkin and Liam's relationship to Frumpkin differently.
Mm.
And I'm interested and also worried in what that means for the tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
And see, I thought a few of those things too, but the way my brain works, I immediately thought of the most recent UA, the Wilde races, and I was like, ooh, either the fairy or like the rabbit foot, one of the small ones. You could play that as this guy got to the material plane because he was summoned as a wizard's familiar, but then released because they are Fae individuals.
yeah.
And that could be whatever background you can fit. That he was someone's familiar, and then
Yeah, I'm worried it's going to be darker. I don't know. I mean, even without Frumpkin, he may keep the cats.
yeah,
But I'm a little worried for him. And yeah, I think he has heard Caduceus and Jester both say, we're not going to make it back. And I think his interaction with Frumpkin in that scene was him deciding, I'm going to make sure they make it back.
Yeah.
The two of them, Veth, everybody's making it back.
Yeah.
And I'll die to make sure that happens. But last, certainly not least, Ashley gets her reward for being a rapt listener with another vision, induced by eating the flower.
Yes. Getting high.
And that whole scene, Matt had that planned.
Yeah.
And what the Stormlord was going to say was on his DM screen.
Mm-hmm.
So she will be attuned to the Holy Avenger.
Yeah.
Next episode.
Yeah.
At the end of that scene, she will be attuned, and they will be able to go.
Well, I think he told her probably off camera.
Yeah. Well,
And
when
then,
she was on Talks, she talked about how she had mentioned to Matt.
Yeah.
And that he implied that he would work with her.
Well, and Matt said as much as well.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is he probably told her after that taping, hey, you can attune now. And what we'll see when she pulls it, and there's a mention of now that I'm attuned to it.
No. I think he told her it's possible for you to attune to it after this dream. Because it is going to require her to do something. And what I think it's going to require her to do is what I was yelling at my TV to do, for her to do, which is to grab the lightning. To become, like Matt foreshadowed it with, as she's breathing, thunder is in her chest. And I think when she grabs the lightning, that will be
the Holy Avenger.
Indicative of her grabbing the Holy Avenger, of becoming the storm.
Well, it could be she grabs the lightning bolt and it transforms into the Holy Avenger because she looked for it and didn't have it.
Or she wakes up holding it.
Yeah.
Although it would be really freaking awesome that Matt says, and you guys notice a bolt of lightning come down from the sky and strike Yasha sitting in the open holding the Holy Avenger. Because that would be metal as hell, and that has been Yasha's aesthetic thus far.
Yep.
And it would be awesome for Thunder to break all of the Clay's windows, because that will be 2 churches that she's ruined.
Oy vey.
It's the Stormlord. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
As he says, we how did he put it? We refresh the land and wash it clean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. That's where we start. We finish the vision. She hopefully will do whatever she needs to do. She's now attuned. They rest. We teleport. There's probably more sendings before bed.
Yeah.
Bunch
of sending, attunement, a bunch of sendings, rest, teleport. Possibly ascending just before the teleport, depending on whether or not they think to save this spell slot and tell Essek, hey, this is the countdown timer, we're resting and then going, or hey, we're on our way right now.
Yeah.
In 3, 2, 1. Okay, wait a minute.
I am excited for the mishap because there will be one. Matt has told them as much.
Yeah.
Through all of the various archmages they've talked to, including Essek, who has all the same tricks and knowledge that Caleb does. That doesn't matter. It's harrowing teleporting back here. So there will be a mishap. I kind of hope they materialize miles above the ground.
That's an easy fix.
Yeah.
2 of them have feather fall.
Yeah, but it will be funny because Ford will freak the fuck out. The collar, yes, Nick, I think it will work on Lucian. Insofar as it will prevent his spellcasting. I don't think it prevents his use of the eyes. And he's a blood hunter, so he's deadly without spells.
Yeah. And really, does he have any spells without the eyes?
Well, he has his tiefling spells. If the eyes... Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I don't think we've seen him do anything. I don't think he's... I don't think he's the Order of the Profane, which is the only blood hunter order that casts spells, per se.
I don't think we know enough about the collar. If the collar is anti-magic...
It shuts down the eyes.
It shuts down the eyes. It shuts down everything.
Right.
But I don't think we have enough information to say that for sure. Because all we know for sure is that wearing it, you can't cast spells.
Right.
So, yeah. I think we go to break when they get to where they're going. And after break is them planning their ambush. And depending on how long that takes, we may get the confrontation with Lucian.
See, I think it's going to be a little early in the episode for the break when they get there. I don't think they're going to take 2 hours and Sen needs a rest.
Well, it all depends. Is Matt going to make them check for a random encounter? Is my concern. That's why I put it till after the break. Because it's possible.
I guess if there's a big enough mishap and or a random encounter, it's possible.
Yeah. And also, they may plan before the break the attack.
Yeah.
So, and I think they are going to get their asses kicked, but I don't think anybody's going to die. I think they will defeat the Tomb Takers, and then it will be a discussion of now we have to go to the city to save Yusa, as we also predicted that he would need rescuing.
I'm half tempted to say they may take out the Tomb Takers, but they end up having to follow Lucian to this astral. Like in the defeat, he gets away.
Yeah, I mean it's tied to whatever cycle that was mentioned in that book on the Fireplane.
Right.
Because he said again, we're on a timetable, but we're keeping it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But we will see you guys. Talk to you next Tuesday, and I guess should